Dr. Kethavar pressed his six-fingered hand against the observation window and watched the damaged alien ship slowly drift toward their research station. The vessel looked primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. Its hull showed burn marks and holes that spoke of recent violence. "Are you certain about this?" asked Commander Veltar, her blue skin flickering with nervous patterns. "We know nothing about these creatures." "That is exactly why we must help them," Kethavar replied. His research team had spent decades studying alien biology, but they had never encountered a species quite like this one. The ship's distress signals contained mathematical sequences that proved intelligence, but the technology seemed so basic. The rescue operation took 3 hours. When the airlocks finally opened, Kethavar got his first look at the aliens they had saved. They walked on 2 legs like Zephyrians, but everything else was different. Their skin came in various shades of brown and pink. Their eyes sat in the front of their heads, not on the sides like civilized species. Most disturbing of all, many of them bore scars across their bodies. The leader stepped forward. She was smaller than most of her crew, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to look at everything at once. When she spoke, her words came through the translation device in a calm, controlled voice. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Persistence. We are grateful for your assistance." Kethavar noticed how she kept her hands visible but ready to move quickly. Her crew spread out behind her in a pattern that wasn't random. They were watching all the exits, he realized. Even while being rescued, they were preparing for danger. "Welcome aboard Research Station Harmony," Kethavar said, trying to use his most peaceful tone. "I am Dr. Kethavar, head of xenobiology. You are safe here." Something flickered in the human captain's eyes. "Safe." She repeated the word quietly, as if testing its meaning. Over the next few hours, Kethavar learned basic facts about the humans. They came from a world called Earth, located many light years away. Their ship had been part of a larger group traveling to establish a new colony. 3 months ago, unknown attackers had destroyed most of their fleet. The Persistence and its crew of 12 were the only survivors. What did these attackers look like? Commander Veltar asked during the initial briefing. Captain Rodriguez exchanged glances with her crew before answering. Large, mechanical parts mixed with biological tissue. They seem to consume organic matter for fuel. They've been hunting us across 3 star systems. The Zephyrian command staff looked at each other with confusion. In 5 centuries of space travel, they had never encountered a truly hostile species. Wars were things that happened in ancient history, before civilization reached the stars. "Perhaps you misunderstood their intentions," suggested Dr. Yithlon, the station's cultural specialist. "Many species have unusual feeding habits that might appear threatening." The human called Marcus Webb, their engineer, laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Ma'am, when something shoots at you with weapons designed to cause maximum pain before death, there's not much room for misunderstanding." Kethavar began his studies immediately. Human biology fascinated him. Their bones were incredibly dense, their muscles designed for both speed and endurance. Their healing factor was remarkable. Minor cuts closed within days instead of weeks. Most puzzling of all, they seemed immune to Zephyrian telepathic scanning. "How do you communicate with each other without mental links?" he asked Captain Rodriguez during one of their sessions. "We talk," she said simply. "We watch body language. We learn to read each other over time." "But how do you coordinate complex activities? How do you know what your teammates are thinking during dangerous situations?" Rodriguez smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Practice. Lots and lots of practice." The humans adapted to life on the station with disturbing efficiency. Within 2 days, they had memorized every corridor, every emergency protocol, every potential escape route. They exercised together each morning, their movements sharp and precise. They called it combat training, but to Kethavar it looked like they were preparing for war. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human medic, proved especially interesting. She helped treat injured Zephyrians with gentle efficiency, but Kethavar noticed how she studied their anatomy with the same intensity she used for healing. When he asked about it, she explained that understanding how bodies worked helped her save lives. "On Earth we have a saying," she told him. "Know your enemy's weaknesses, but also know your friend's strengths." Sometimes they're the same thing. The most unsettling human was Corporal James Liu. He rarely spoke, but his eyes never stopped moving. He watched everything and everyone with the patience of a predator. When Kethavar tried to scan his mind, he felt like he was pushing against a wall of steel. Your people seem very alert, HFY mentioned to Captain Rodriguez one evening. We've learned to be careful, she replied. Our history taught us that the universe isn't always friendly. But surely your species has evolved beyond primitive survival instincts. You have technology, space travel, civilization. Rodriguez looked at him for a long moment. Doctor, our technology exists because of our survival instincts, not despite them. Every tool we've ever built started as a way to stay alive just one more day. The conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the station. Commander Veltar's voice echoed through the corridors. All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching. Multiple contacts, hostile configuration. HFY felt his blood turn cold. In his entire career, he had never heard those words. The Zephyrian fleet was still days away on a diplomatic mission. They were alone. The humans' reaction was immediate and terrifying. They didn't panic or ask questions. Captain Rodriguez snapped out orders in a voice that carried absolute authority. Her crew moved with sudden, deadly purpose. Webb, I need a full scan of this station's systems. Chen, inventory all medical supplies and find anything that can be used for trauma surgery. Liu, map all defensible positions and identify potential choke points. Captain, HFY stammered. We have security protocols. Your protocols are designed for accidents and equipment failures. Rodriguez cut him off. These aren't accidents. Through the observation windows, they could see the approaching ships. They were exactly as the humans had described, a mixture of metal and flesh that moved with predatory grace. Even their ship designs looked hungry. How many? Liu asked, his voice calm as stone. 15 vessels, Webb reported from the sensor station. They're jamming our communications. Standard pack hunting formation, Chen observed, checking her medical kit. They've done this before. Commander Veltar stood frozen in the center of the command deck, her skin flickering with panic patterns. She had trained for many emergencies, but never for war. Captain Rodriguez stepped beside her. Commander, I need you to give me command of your station's defensive systems. I don't understand. We're a research facility. We don't have weapons. Everything is a weapon if you use it right, Rodriguez said quietly. The question is whether you trust us to protect your people. HFY watched the exchange with growing dread. The humans weren't asking for permission. They were explaining what was about to happen. Their polite, grateful demeanor was falling away like a shed skin, revealing something underneath that made his primitive brain scream warnings. Outside, the attacking fleet was getting closer. Inside, 12 humans were transforming into something the peaceful Zephyrians had never seen before. The rescue, HFY realized, was over. Now they would learn why some species feared the dark between the stars. The first attack came without warning. One moment, the research station's sensors showed 15 unknown ships in formation. The next moment, the station shuddered as something massive slammed into the outer hull. Hull breach in Section 7, Webb called out, his fingers dancing over controls he had learned in 2 days. They're cutting through the armor like it's paper. Commander Veltar stood paralyzed in the center of the command deck. Her training had prepared her for equipment failures, natural disasters, even first contact scenarios. Nothing had prepared her for war. Captain Rodriguez moved with calm efficiency. Liu, take Chen and seal Section 7. Use anything you can find. Furniture, equipment, bodies if necessary. Webb, I need you to reroute power from non-essential systems to the structural integrity fields. Captain, HFY protested. This is a research station. We have civilians aboard, scientists. Doctor, those civilians are now combatants whether they want to be or not. Rodriguez replied. The enemy doesn't care about your profession. Through the viewports, they could see the attacking ships clearly now. The vessels were nightmares of twisted metal and organic tissue. Sections that looked like machinery pulsed with biological rhythms. Weapon ports open like hungry mouths. What are they? Whispered Dr. Yithlon. Devourers, said Rodriguez. They consume organic matter to fuel their technology. Your research station probably looks like a buffet to them. The second attack was more coordinated. 3 ships latched onto different sections of the station like parasites. Cutting beams began carving through the hull with surgical precision. They're making entry points, Webb reported. Multiple breach attempts in progress. Standard feeding behavior, Chen added, her voice clinical despite the circumstances. They'll create multiple access points to prevent their prey from escaping. HFY stared at the human medic. She was discussing their impending doom with the same tone she used to describe bacterial cultures. How can you be so calm?
Panic kills, Chen replied simply.
Fear makes you stupid. We can't afford either right now. Rodriguez was already moving to the station's engineering section. Webb, can you overload the plasma conduits in sections 4 and 9? That would kill anyone in those areas. Commander Veltar finally found her voice. Those areas are already lost, Rodriguez said bluntly. We evacuate who we can and use the explosions to take out the ships attached to those sections. The plan was brutally simple. The humans had assessed the situation, calculated acceptable losses, and chosen a course of action that maximized survival chances. They weren't trying to save everyone. They were trying to save as many as possible. Kethvar followed the human crew as they implemented their strategy. What he saw changed his understanding of everything he thought he knew about sentient species. The humans moved through the station like they owned it. They had memorized not just the layout, but the function of every system. Webb turned the research station's particle accelerator into a weapon by reversing the magnetic containment fields. Chen converted the medical bay into a triage center and ammunition depot, using surgical tools as improvised weapons. Liu demonstrated the most disturbing transformation. The quiet corporal became something Kethvar's mind could barely process. He moved through the corridors like death itself, setting traps with maintenance equipment, creating kill zones from storage areas, and preparing ambush points with the patience of a spider. Corporal, Kethvar asked as Liu rigged an explosive device from cleaning supplies. How do you know how to do this? Liu looked up from his work, his expression utterly calm. Every human learns to fight, Doctor. We've been killing things that want to kill us for 3 million years. It's what we do. The first Devourer boarding party breached Section 4 exactly as Rodriguez predicted. The explosion that followed lit up space like a miniature star. One enemy ship was destroyed instantly, its biological components cooking in the plasma fire. But the victory came at a cost. 17 Zephyrians had been in that section. The humans had evacuated 8. Acceptable losses, Rodriguez reported to Commander Veltar. We traded 17 lives for 43 saved, plus elimination of 1 enemy vessel. Veltar's skin patterns showed horror and confusion. How can you calculate such things? Those were people, not numbers. Commander, in war, everything is numbers, Rodriguez replied. The side that does the math better usually wins. The second wave of Devourers entered through Section 9. This time they encountered Liu's traps. The creatures were enormous, combining the worst aspects of insect and machine. Their claws could tear through steel. Their mandibles dripped acid that dissolved metal on contact. They walked into a maze of death. Liu had turned the research laboratories into a killing field. Gravity generators created crushing zones. Laser research equipment became automated defense turrets. Chemical storage areas became poison gas traps. Kethvar watched through security cameras as the human corporal systematically eliminated creatures that should have been apex predators. Liu didn't fight them directly, he let the station itself become his weapon. How is this possible? Kethvar whispered. Humans are tool users, Chen explained, treating a wounded Zephyrian while simultaneously monitoring tactical displays. We don't just adapt to our environment. We make our environment adapt to us. The third breach came in Section 12, where Rodriguez was waiting with a squad of volunteer Zephyrians. The captain had spent an hour teaching them basic combat tactics, turning peaceful researchers into soldiers through sheer force of will and necessity. The Devourers that entered that section faced something they had never encountered before. Coordinated resistance led by someone who understood their feeding patterns and attack strategies. Rodriguez had studied the enemy during their previous encounters. She knew they relied on overwhelming force and intimidation. She knew they attacked in specific formations designed to maximize terror and confusion. So she gave them what they didn't expect: discipline, coordination, and absolute tactical thinking. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 6 Devourers lay dead, and the human captain was calmly reloading improvised weapons while her Zephyrian volunteers stared at her with something approaching awe. Status report. Rodriguez called over the comm system. Section A, 4 and 9 secured, Liu reported. 14 enemy KIA, no survivors. Section 12 clear, Chen added. Multiple wounded, but all treatable. Engineering holding steady, Webb confirmed. I've got their ship movements tracked. They're regrouping for a final assault. Kethavar realized that something fundamental had changed aboard the research station. The Zephyrians were no longer following their own command structure. They were looking to the humans for orders, for guidance, for protection. Without anyone officially declaring it, Captain Rodriguez had become the station's commanding officer. All personnel to prepared positions, Rodriguez announced. This is their final push. They're going to try to take the command center and the main computer core simultaneously. If they succeed, they can lock down the station and harvest everyone at their leisure. How do you know this? Commander Veltar asked. Rodriguez's smile was cold as space. Because it's what I would do. Outside, the remaining Devourer ships were moving into attack formation. Inside, 12 humans were preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson about apex predators. The real battle was about to begin. The Devourers came through the walls. Kethavar had never seen anything like it. The creatures didn't bother with doors or airlocks. They simply cut through the station's hull wherever they wanted to enter, their acid-dripping mandibles melting through metal like it was soft cheese. But the humans were ready. Contact. Section 15. Liu's voice crackled over the comm system. His tone was as calm as if he were reporting the weather. Multiple hostiles engaging. Kethavar watched through the security cameras as the human corporal demonstrated why his species had earned their reputation. Liu didn't fight the Devourers directly. That would have been suicide. Instead, he fought like a human. The corridor Liu defended had been transformed into a death trap. Magnetic field generators, normally used for containing plasma experiments, now created invisible barriers that slowed the attacking creatures. Gravity plates ripped from the floor created zones where the Devourers found themselves, suddenly weighing 3 times normal. But the most terrifying part was how Liu used the station's own systems against invaders. He had reprogrammed the automatic fire suppression system to spray industrial acid instead of flame retardant. When Devourers tried to use their natural acid immunity, they found themselves dissolved by something far more concentrated than anything their biology produced. Liu, fall back to secondary position, Rodriguez ordered. Negative, Captain. I've got them channeled exactly where we want them. Kethavar watched as Liu triggered his final trap. The section's main power coupling, overloaded and redirected through the station's medical scanners, created an electromagnetic pulse that fried the mechanical parts of every Devourer in the corridor. The creatures didn't die immediately. They thrashed and screamed as their cybernetic components failed, leaving them with only their biological systems. But those biological systems had been dependent on their technology for so long that they couldn't function alone. 12 confirmed kills, Liu reported, moving to assist Section 12. Dr. Chen's position was under assault by a different type of Devourer. These were smaller, faster, designed for precision surgery rather than brute force. They could have carved through a squad of Zephyrian security forces in seconds. They had never faced a human combat medic. Chen had converted the medical bay into something that belonged in a nightmare. Surgical tools became weapons, anesthetic gas became poison, and medical scanners became targeting systems for improvised projectile weapons. But what made the difference was how she thought. As a medic, Chen understood anatomy, how bodies worked, how they could be damaged, how they could be stopped. She applied this knowledge with surgical precision. Pressure point at the base of their neck, she reported over the comm, while simultaneously treating a wounded Zephyrian. Severs their neural connection to cybernetic components. Also, their acid glands can be overloaded with electrical stimulation. Kethavar realized he was watching someone practice medicine and warfare simultaneously. Chen saved lives and took them with equal skill, switching between healing and killing as the situation demanded. Chen, you've got more incoming, Webb warned from his position in engineering. I see them, Chen replied. Kethavar, I need you to help me with something. I'm not a fighter, Kethavar protested. You're not a fighter yet, Chen corrected. Hand me that bone saw. Meanwhile, Webb had turned the engineering section into a fortress of death. The human engineer understood something about technology that no Zephyrian had ever considered. Everything could be weaponized. The station's main reactor became a weapon by redirecting plasma through the ventilation system. Life support systems became targeting computers. Even the artificial gravity could be turned into a crushing weapon with the right modifications. Engineering to bridge, Webb reported. I've got control of their ship's navigation systems. How is that possible? Commander Veltar asked. They're cybernetic, Webb explained while simultaneously fighting off 3 devourers with a weapon he had built from scanning equipment. Everything cybernetic can be hacked if you understand the principles. I'm feeding them false navigation data. Through the viewports, they could see one of the devourer ships suddenly veer away from the station and crash into another vessel. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. But Captain Rodriguez was implementing the most disturbing strategy of all. She wasn't just fighting the devourers, she was studying them. Webb, I need you to capture one of their communication devices, she ordered. Captain, that's impossible. They don't leave equipment behind. Then we'll have to take it from a living one. What followed was something that would haunt Kethvar for the rest of his life. Rodriguez didn't just hunt a devourer. She dissected its tactics, learned its weaknesses, and then used that knowledge to capture it alive. The process took 27 minutes. When it was over, Rodriguez had a living devourer trapped in a containment field. Its cybernetic components disabled, but its biological functions intact. Now we learn how they think, Rodriguez announced. Captain, Kethvar protested. We can't torture a sentient being. Rodriguez looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than her years. Doctor, this isn't torture. This is education. And the lesson plan includes keeping your people alive. The interrogation that followed revealed the truth about the devourer attack. They weren't just randomly hunting the human survivors. They had been tracking the persistence for months, waiting for it to lead them to a larger population center. The research station was never the target, Rodriguez realized. We were. You saved us, which made you part of the hunt. The implications hit everyone at the same time. The Zephyrians hadn't rescued human refugees. They had brought a predator pack straight to their door. How many more ships are coming? Rodriguez asked the captured devourer. The creature's answer chilled everyone to the bone. The 15 ships weren't a hunting pack, they were scouts. The main fleet was still 3 hours away. 47 vessels, the devourer hissed through its translator. Enough to consume every organic molecule on this station and still hunger for more. Commander Veltar collapsed into her command chair. We can't fight 47 ships. Our fleet won't return for days. Your fleet couldn't fight 47 ships either, Rodriguez said bluntly. Zephyrian tactics are designed for peacekeeping and exploration, not war. Then what do we do? Veltar asked. Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, it reached her eyes. We do what humans do best. We turn a defensive action into a hunting expedition. I don't understand. Commander, your people think like prey. You run from threats, hide from dangers, call for help when things go wrong. But humans think like predators. When something threatens our pack, we don't run from it. Rodriguez turned to address her crew. Webb, I need you to hack into their communication systems and send a message to their main fleet. Shen, prepare our wounded for transport. Liu set charges throughout the station. Captain, Kethvar said, horror growing in his voice. You're going to destroy the station? No, Doctor. We're going to use it as bait. The plan that Rodriguez outlined was beyond anything the Zephyrians could have imagined. Instead of defending the station, the humans were going to abandon it, but not before turning it into the galaxy's largest trap. The main fleet will expect to find us cowering in the station's central core, Rodriguez explained. Instead, they're going to find a nuclear reactor set to overload, 47 ships worth of stolen communication equipment, broadcasting false distress signals, and one very angry pack of humans with 3 hours to prepare an ambush. Kethvar felt his world changing as he watched the humans work. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were thinking 10 steps ahead, turning every disadvantage into a weapon, every weakness into a strength. The research station was about to become a classroom, and the curriculum was going to be written in the language that humans spoke best. Violence with purpose. 3 hours was not enough time to evacuate a research station. 3 hours was barely enough time to plan a desperate escape. But Captain Rodriguez wasn't planning an escape. She was planning a massacre. The Devourer fleet will arrive expecting to find survivors hiding in the station's core. Rodriguez explained to the assembled Zephyrians. Instead, they'll find a reactor set to overload and US positioned in the asteroid field behind the gas giant. Commander Veltar's skin patterns showed confusion and fear. But Captain, we can't abandon the station. Decades of research, irreplaceable equipment. Commander, equipment can be replaced. Lives cannot. Rodriguez's voice carried absolute authority. Besides, we're not abandoning anything. We're turning your research station into the galaxy's most expensive weapon. Webb was already implementing the technical aspects of the plan. The human engineer had spent the last hour reprogramming every system on the station. Life support would continue functioning until the last possible moment, making the station appear inhabited. Then exactly 12 minutes after the Devourer fleet arrived, the main reactor would experience a catastrophic overload. The explosion will take out at least half their fleet, Webb explained to Kethvar. The debris field will scatter the survivors and damage their coordination. And then, Kethvar asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Then we hunt the survivors, Liu said quietly. The evacuation itself revealed another disturbing aspect of human nature. They didn't just retreat, they relocated with military precision. Every Zephyrian was assigned to a specific human guardian. Every piece of essential equipment was prioritized and loaded according to strategic value. Most unsettling of all, the humans had somehow convinced 36 Zephyrian researchers to participate in what was essentially a suicide mission, Doctor. Chen showed us the medical scans, explained. Dr. Yithlon when Kethvar asked why she was volunteering. The Devourers don't just kill their prey. They keep the victims alive as long as possible while feeding. If we're captured, death would be a mercy. Chen had shared the biological data with clinical precision. The Devourer's feeding process could keep a victim conscious and aware for days while slowly consuming their organic matter. It was torture designed by evolution itself. So we fight, Yithlon concluded. The humans have shown us how. The human teaching methods were brutally efficient. In 3 hours, they transformed peaceful researchers into something approaching soldiers. Not good soldiers, there wasn't time for that, but functional ones. Forget everything you know about conflict resolution, Rodriguez told the Zephyrian volunteers. These creatures don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't show mercy. Your only choices are to kill them or be eaten alive. Liu taught close-quarters combat using improvised weapons. His lessons were simple: where to strike, how to strike, and what to do when striking didn't work. Most species have similar weak points, he explained while demonstrating on a captured devourer corpse. Neural clusters, circulation systems, sensory organs. Pain is universal. Fear is universal. Use both. Chen taught field medicine with a focus on combat trauma. Her lessons covered everything from treating acid burns to performing surgery while under fire. Pain medication can be a weapon, she told her students. Overdose an enemy and they become sluggish. Underdose an ally and they stay alert. Everything is a tool if you understand how to use it. Webb taught improvised explosives and electronic warfare. His curriculum covered topics that no Zephyrian university had ever imagined. Your species thinks technology serves peaceful purposes, he said while building a bomb from research equipment. Human technology serves survival first, everything else second. Today, you learn to think like humans. But it was Rodriguez who taught the most important lesson: strategic thinking. War isn't about being brave or strong, she explained. War is about making better decisions faster than your enemy. Every choice has consequences. Every action has a response. Think 3 moves ahead, always. As the deadline approached, Kethvar found himself assigned to Rodriguez's command group. He would witness the battle from the human captain's perspective, seeing how she thought and planned and killed. Doctor, I need you to understand something, Rodriguez said as they prepared to leave the station. What you're about to see will change how you think about every species in the galaxy. Humans aren't special because we're stronger or smarter. We're special because we never learned to stop fighting. The evacuation ships were hidden in the asteroid field, their signatures masked by natural interference. From their concealed position, they could monitor the station's sensors and watch the approaching Devourer fleet. 47 ships, each one large enough to carry thousands of warriors, each one designed for consumption and conquest. Contact, Webb reported. Devourer fleet dropping out of hyperspace. They're moving into formation around the station. The alien vessels approached with predatory confidence. Their scouts had reported a crippled research station with minimal defenses and abundant organic matter. They expected easy prey. They're scanning the station, Chen observed, detecting multiple life signs in the central core. Those life signs were fake, generated by Webb's programming. But the Devourers couldn't know that. Boarding parties launching, Liu noted. Looks like they're sending 40% of their forces inside. Rodriguez nodded. Standard feeding protocol. Send enough warriors to overwhelm any resistance. Keep the rest in reserve to prevent escape. Kethavar watched as the Devourer boarding craft latched onto the station. Through the sensor feeds, he could see the creatures pouring through the corridors, following false life signs toward the central core. They had 11 minutes before the reactor overloaded. "Captain," one of the Zephyrian volunteers whispered, "how can you remain so calm?" Rodriguez's answer chilled Kethavar to his core. "Because this isn't war, Doctor. This is pest control." The explosion, when it came, turned the research station into a miniature supernova. The reactor overload released more energy than most stellar events. 17 Devourer ships were vaporized instantly. 8 more were crippled by debris and radiation. The surviving vessels scattered in confusion, their coordination broken, their overwhelming numerical advantage reduced to manageable proportions. "Now we begin the real work," Rodriguez announced. "The human ships, modified Zephyrian, vessels equipped with weapons that shouldn't have been possible, emerged from the asteroid field like sharks scenting blood. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a systematic extermination. The humans had studied Devourer tactics for months. They knew how the creatures thought, how they reacted to threats, how they communicated with each other. Every weakness had been cataloged and prepared for. "Target their command ship first," Rodriguez ordered. Without coordination, they revert to individual hunting behavior. The attack was surgical in its precision. Human-modified torpedoes, armed with electromagnetic pulses, fried the cybernetic components of the Devourer command vessel. The biological crew found themselves trapped in a dead ship, their technology useless. "Secondary targets, communications array and navigation systems," Rodriguez continued. "Blind them and deafen them." One by one, the surviving Devourer ships lost their ability to coordinate, to communicate, to navigate effectively. They became isolated predators in an environment where their prey had become the hunters. "Final phase," Rodriguez announced. "Close quarters engagement." The boarding actions that followed were unlike anything in galactic military history. Humans didn't just fight the Devourers, they outthought them, outmaneuvered them, and demonstrated a level of tactical creativity that no other species had ever achieved. Kethavar watched as human teams systematically cleared Devourer vessels, using everything from improvised weapons to psychological warfare. They turned the creature's own acidic biology against them, created false retreat scenarios to lure them into traps, and demonstrated an understanding of fear as a weapon. But the most disturbing aspect was how the humans treated their enemies. They didn't show hatred or anger. They approached the extermination with the same calm professionalism they brought to engineering problems. "It's nothing personal," Chen explained while treating wounded Zephyrians. "They're just a threat that needs to be eliminated." 6 hours after the battle began, it was over. 47 Devourer ships had been reduced to floating debris. Thousands of the galaxy's most feared predators had been systematically eliminated by 12 humans and their hastily trained alien allies. "Status report," Rodriguez requested. "All enemy vessels neutralized," Liu replied. "No survivors detected. Casualties on our side. 14 wounded, 3 critical, no fatalities." Rodriguez nodded as if the numbers were exactly what she had expected. Because, Kethavar realized, they were exactly what she had calculated. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had solved a mathematical equation where the variables were lives and the solution was survival. The Zephyrian rescue fleet arrived 12 hours too late. Admiral Zethka had brought 40 vessels, the largest military force the peaceful Zephyrians had assembled in 3 centuries. He had expected to find Research Station Harmony under siege, possibly destroyed with survivors hiding in the wreckage. Instead, he found Captain Rodriguez calmly cataloging Devourer technology while her crew trained Zephyrian researchers in something she called combat engineering. "Admiral," Commander Veltar greeted him over the communication channel. Her voice was steady, but her skin patterns showed profound psychological changes. "Thank you for coming, but the situation has been resolved." Admiral Zethka stared at the tactical display. The debris field where 47 Devourer ships had died stretched across millions of cubic kilometers. His sensors detected no hostile contacts, no distress signals, no evidence of ongoing conflict. "Commander, what happened here?" "We learned, Admiral. We learned what it means to think like humans. Dr. Kethvar's report would eventually become required reading at every military academy in Zephyrian space. But the man who wrote it was fundamentally changed from the peaceful researcher who had first encountered the human survivors. They call it total war. Kethvar explained to Admiral Zethka during the debriefing. Not just defeating an enemy, but understanding them so completely that defeat becomes inevitable. The Admiral reviewed the battle recordings with growing disbelief. The humans hadn't just fought the Devourers, they had predicted every move, countered every strategy, and turned the creatures' own instincts against them. "This is impossible," he protested. "No species can achieve this level of tactical superiority without decades of study and preparation." "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez interrupted, "we've been studying warfare for 3 million years. Every human child learns tactics through games. Every human adult understands that survival requires constant preparation for threats that haven't appeared yet." The conversation took place in what had been Research Station Harmony's main laboratory. The humans had rebuilt it using salvaged Devourer technology, creating something that was part research facility, part military command center, and part monument to efficient violence. The Devourers were apex predators in their region of space, Rodriguez continued. They had conquered 43 star systems using the same tactics that failed here. Those tactics were designed to work against species that think like prey. And humans think like predators, Admiral. We think like predators because we evolved as predators. Everything else is just details. Admiral Zethka found himself studying the human captain with new eyes. She was small compared to most Zephyrians, physically unremarkable except for those forward-facing eyes and the scars that marked her skin. But when she spoke, every Zephyrian in the room listened with complete attention. "Captain, my species has achieved interstellar civilization through cooperation and peaceful exploration. We've made contact with dozens of intelligent species without conflict. Because you've been lucky, Admiral. You've encountered species that evolved along similar lines. Herbivores who learned to use tools. Social creatures who developed technology to support larger populations. You've never met a species that learned to survive by killing things that wanted to kill them." Dr. Chen approached the group, carrying a data pad filled with biological analysis. "Admiral, we've completed our study of devourer physiology. They're fascinating from an evolutionary perspective." She began explaining how the creatures had developed their cybernetic integration, their feeding mechanisms, their pack hunting strategies. To Chen, they were simply another species to be understood and categorized. "Doctor," Admiral Zethka asked, "how can you study these creatures so calmly? They would have killed everyone on this station." Chen looked genuinely confused by the question. "Admiral, understanding your enemies is the first step in defeating them. We couldn't develop effective countermeasures without knowing how their biology functioned. But the psychological impact of such violence—" "What psychological impact?" Chen asked. "They were threats. We eliminated them. That's how the universe works." Admiral Zethka was beginning to understand something that chilled him. The humans weren't traumatized by the battle. They weren't celebrating their victory. They were simply moving on to the next task with the same calm efficiency they brought to everything else. Corporal Liu had set up a training area where he taught Zephyrian volunteers advanced combat techniques. His students practiced with weapons that had been improvised from research equipment, moving through scenarios that prepared them for threats they had never imagined. "Corporal," the Admiral asked, "don't your people have regulations against teaching military tactics to civilian populations?" Liu paused in his instruction. "Sir, every human is a civilian until they need to be a soldier. We don't have the luxury of keeping those roles separate. But surely your government has protocols for first contact situations, rules about sharing military technology." "Admiral," Liu said quietly, "human governments learned a long time ago that survival protocols override diplomatic protocols. We're still alive because we never forgot that lesson." Engineer Webb had established himself in the ruins of the station's main computer core, where he worked with Zephyrian technicians to reverse engineer Devourer technology. The devices he was building belonged in no peaceful civilization's arsenal. The Devourer's biggest mistake was assuming their technology was superior, Webb explained while constructing something that looked suspiciously like a planetary defense system. "Advanced doesn't mean better. It just means more complicated, and complicated systems have more failure points." "Mr. Webb," Admiral Zethka said, "the weapons you're building could destabilize the entire sector. Webb looked up from his work with genuine surprise. Admiral, these aren't weapons. These are tools. Whether they're used as weapons depends on who's holding them and what they're pointed at. The distinction seemed important to the human, though Admiral Zethka couldn't understand why, but it was his final conversation with Captain Rodriguez that truly opened the Admiral's eyes to humanity's nature. Captain, my people are struggling to understand what happened here. We've never encountered a species quite like yours. Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm. Admiral, humans aren't unique because we're violent. Lots of species are violent. We're unique because we're violent with purpose. I don't understand the distinction. Violence for territory, for resources, for dominance. That's common throughout the galaxy. But humans learn to use violence as a tool for problem solving. When we encounter a threat, we don't just fight it. We study it, understand it, and then eliminate it so completely that it never threatens anyone again. That seems excessive. Admiral, how many Zephyrian colonies have been attacked by Devourers? 3 in the past decade. We lost contact with them entirely. How many human colonies have been attacked by Devourers? Admiral Zethka checked his records. According to your initial report, this was the first contact between your species. Correct. And how many Devourer ships are still active in this region of space? The answer hung in the air like a weapon. 0. The humans had eliminated the entire threat in a single engagement. Captain, are you saying that your species would have responded this way to any hostile contact? Rodriguez's expression became very serious. Admiral, the Persistence wasn't a colony ship. It was a reconnaissance vessel. Our real colony ships carry 50,000 people each, along with full military escorts and enough firepower to sterilize planets. The implications hit Admiral Zethka like a physical blow. You mean, the Devourers attacked our scouts, Admiral? Our scouts? Do you know what humans do when something threatens our children? Before he could answer, Rodriguez continued with a voice that carried the weight of 3 million years of evolution. There are 47,000 humans currently hunting Devourer fleets across this entire region of space. They won't stop until every single threat is eliminated. We don't just win wars, Admiral. We make sure they never happen again. But surely there are diplomatic solutions. Admiral, diplomacy works with species that evolved to communicate. The Devourers evolved to consume. You can't negotiate with hunger itself. As Admiral Zethka prepared to leave with his fleet, Dr. Kethvar approached him with a final observation that would reshape Zephyrian foreign policy for generations. Admiral, I need you to understand something crucial. What we witnessed here wasn't humans at their most dangerous. This was humans showing restraint. Restraint? They could have eliminated the Devourer threat months ago. Instead, they used themselves as bait to draw the enemy to a location where collateral damage would be minimized. They chose to fight a defensive battle in order to protect civilian populations. The xenobiologist's skin patterns showed deep contemplation. The humans aren't just apex predators, Admiral. They're apex predators with conscience. They choose when and how to use their capabilities. And if they chose differently, Kethvar looked back at the humans who were calmly preparing to continue their journey to establish their colony. 50,000 people who thought violence was simply another tool for solving problems.